Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. It's taken me a while to get around to uploading it, but I hope you enjoy it. I'm making some copies on Facebook as well, but I might have ideas I forgot to include there, or vice versa. So I was thinking of making parts 1, 2, and 3, possibly even 4, on Facebook first before I go onto YouTube. But I've decided to take this opportunity to upload onto YouTube. Um, at this moment in time. Anyway, yeah, so I hope you enjoy it. And it's basically an idea and a dream I have for encouraging investment into Italian football and possibly even Celtic as well. The ideas I have for one could probably be applied to others as well, to the other, sorry. So anyway, as I say, I'd love to hear what you think as ever. And I think I have much else to say for the intro, but I'll try not to waffle, as I often say, and I hope you enjoy these ideas. I know I do in a list form because it helps me to organise my thoughts. And it's sort of my ideas as a dyslexic creative. So yeah, I hope people with dyslexia are also interested. And I often say I'd love to get people who are not even interested in football to get interested in it. But I know not everyone's interested in football, much less Italian football. But I hope I can change people's opinions. But anyway, here goes. So number one, I think it'd be great if there was like a committee, think tank, brainstorm, network, whatever you want to call it, which looked into ways to attract investment into Italian football. And again, similar could be done for Celtic in Glasgow. Or Celtic could, the people involved in Celtic, like the board, could also travel to different places as well. But also they could invite people to Glasgow, maybe even like work with politicians in Glasgow, which would hopefully benefit the local area as well as Scotland generally. So they could talk about what they contribute to the economy and how investments into Celtic would benefit the economy, even though for Celtic to be tax exempt, as I often mentioned. Number two, a part of that would be listening to what investors want and talking about what would encourage them to invest and things like that. And also, so learning about what businesses want and things like that, and basically looking at what, giving them what they want, what's in it for them, and offering them something that they would find positive or for themselves, of course. And also possibly looking at other leagues, like what they can learn from the E.P.L, the English Premier League, and other leagues around the world, as well as other teams, and like what they do well and what they don't do so well, and looking at how it can be better managed, which I hope to come to in more detail. Number three, it would be great if Italian politicians, and in the case of Celtic, if they could get some sort of deals to have the lowest possible taxes for businesses that invest in Italian football and Celtic respectively, perhaps, especially for Italian football, and looking at ways like maybe access to the markets in Italy. I'm not sure what Celtic could do in that regard, but yeah, looking at what access they can have to the markets, like different companies that invest, and again, what's in it for them, basically. And I often say, like, as with tax exemptions, also like things like in the case of divorce or other such costs, other business costs or other costs that might incur for a wealthy individual or a wealthy business, and things like that. It would be great, as I say, if Italian could maybe work with FIFA and UEFA and other international bodies, NGOs and charities, and also like the government, the Italian government, and politicians working, and councils, local councils, to work to look into what sort of tax deals they could make for businesses, and like how they could litigate their business expenses, or whatever the word is. That's a big word for me, but yeah, that sort of thing. Number four, also, as I mentioned, I'm trying to keep the ideas a bit different to how I put on Facebook, or I mention on Facebook and vice versa, but because I'm a creature of habit, and a lot of these numbers and lists remind me of things because I have these patterns, including alliterations and things like that, it's a bit difficult to, especially in the case of how numbers remind me of certain things and things like that, to make it a little bit different. But yeah, so one idea I have, which I think would be interesting, is that if Mediterranean countries, as well as Eurasian, transcontinental, and Mid-Eastern countries, could like be pacifists or conscientious objectors, or basically avoid war, like the Swiss. I don't know what that would be classified as if entire countries did that, an entire country. But yeah, obviously Italy coming under the Mediterranean countries, I'd love for them to work with other Mediterranean countries, but even also Mid-Eastern, transcontinental, and especially Eurasian nations as well. So looking at things like like Switzerland does it, I suppose, with banking and finances. But it'd be great if Italian football, especially, maybe even other Mediterranean teams as well. But obviously, I'm focusing on Italian teams. Did so with like football, how people could invest, but staying neutral in wars, and like making footballers into heroes, and also those people who invest to make Italian football better and have things like places or spaces for sport, and like invest in academies for younger Italians to practice, especially. With the club teams, I hope they'll have like half the academies overseas, or half the academy intakes could be from overseas, but like half of them I think should be Italian, so that they can for the national team as well as the club teams, but also have the best players from overseas as well. So as well as buying players, they would hopefully give young people a chance. And I think it'd be great if they had at least three under 21 players, preferably Italian, in each team, from the lower levels all the way up to the higher levels, like in all senior games, to encourage more younger people to practice and things like that. Number 5, again, I think it'd be great to listen to as well as I have goals to help Italian football, and I think it'd be great for them to have 5-10 year plans and look at how they can manage finances better and make it more attractive, to potential investors and sponsors and things like that. I think so they can make like spaces and places for sports and things like that. So in this case, football. And one advantage they could go on is how Italy has one major sport which they really focus on generally, which is football, whereas England, say for instance, has rugby, cricket, and other sports, as good as the E.P.L is. So yeah, I think that's something they could do to attract investors and look at what they have positively to attract investors, and looking at what's in it for the investors, but also what's in it for Italian football. Obviously, from my point of view, I just love to see Italian teams do well. But as a libertarian, I believe in lower taxes anyway, and I believe in privatisation, deregulation, lower taxes anyway. Personally, to be honest, but especially as an Italian football fan, I think that's one thing. When you look at like strikes in other countries, if Italy could discourage strike action, and that would encourage more businesses to invest, but also encourage them to invest mainly in business, because I only support Italy for the business, for football, sorry, not so much other areas. But yeah, hopefully that would encourage people to come and invest in Serie A or Italian football generally. Serie A being top league in Italy, of course, but even Serie B and other leagues as well, grassroots football, and again, spaces and places for sport. Number 6, yeah, I'd love for as many investors and sponsors and people like that to invest. I know a lot of time when I talk about individual clubs, I go through like alliterations and patterns and things like that. Number 7, I would love for Italian football teams to have a partnership with Celtic, so they help Celtic to do as well as possible, especially in domestic games, and they share ideas about how, like, whoever invests in one could perhaps invest in the other. In many cases, for instance, or whoever sponsors one could sponsor the other, and they could share ideas and things like that as well, and help each other to practice, especially at youth level. So Italian teams helping Celtic in those areas, like helping to practice so they can be as good as possible and successful as possible, and Celtic doing the same for Italian football, both for the national team and for club teams. So I'd love to develop that partnership through myself, like me being the connector between them. Number 8, I think the passion of Italian fans, and again, the fact that it is it's pretty much, I know they do have other sports, but it's a pretty much one sport country. So football is the main sport which dominates the papers and things like that, which is another thing that maybe Italian newspapers themselves, magazines, and companies generally, as well as individuals, could donate to their teams as well. A lot of people could do that for their PR. Maybe even Italians could buy from companies more which invest in it, as well as those from the diaspora, which I hope to come to. Number 9, again, I hope they look at ways that they can have 5-10 year plans and look at ways they can make it be attractive to invest in and sponsor Italian teams, and also look at ways to clean corruption, tackle like bureaucracy and things that make it difficult for people to invest or make it undesirable for potential investors and sponsors and things like that. And number 10, I think it'd be great to see youth development and a lot of academies, again, space and places for sport, and funding which would help to raise funds, so that like if they could raise enough funds so that 10% of all Italians who live in Italy, or people who live in Italy even, including migrants, refugees, and other people of different backgrounds, would be welcome through football. And like we're the same. One crazy vision I have, I know I'm a bit of an eccentric, but I know I've got some crazy ideas, but one vision I have is like how all possible Italians could wear like the Italian kit, even in school and maybe even in workplaces. So like the migrants and minorities are like sort of welcome if they sort of integrate through football. So it hopefully improve relations. And I hope to talk about immigration as well, like how having more having a wider pool of talent in football and giving priorities to migrants who are good at football, for instance, helping them to legally migrate and giving them rights, I think would be pretty cool. Just like Brazil does. Brazil doesn't do that, but historically they have a very diverse background, like people from African descent, and also people of mixed race quite a lot. And France, they've done really well through diversity. So I think if Italians saw that, maybe they would think, well, having these immigrants, I suppose it's a bit difficult because I'm only looking at Italy from a point of view of football as a football fan. So, but yeah, for those who are really passionate about football, who want to see Italy do well, both at club, team, and national level, I think having a wider pool of talent, having more migrants in a way would, certainly in football anyway, it would almost certainly be more beneficial than having less people to choose from, for instance. And so yeah, but also they could be encouraged to integrate, which hopefully will cut crime and cut like terrorism or things like that, because they'll have to wear the kit to show they're part of the team. It might be a naive idea of mine, but maybe it could potentially cut those divisions and terrorism if they feel a part of society, and also they have to show they're a part of society by getting involved in football and things like that. Yeah, so I think there were a few points I was going to make on that, but I forgot. But yeah, if enough money was raised, I almost forgot to say, maybe like 10% of all Italian residents, basically, all people in Italy could be 10% of all people in Italy could be involved in football. And like, say if they get injuries, if they get like leg breaks or anything like that, unfortunately, as unfortunate as that is, they would still have funds to fall back on. So some of that investment money could be used so that if people don't make it into football or they get injuries, they still have financial support and possibly other support. Like I was watching a documentary about how in England, and I'm sure this happens all around the world, if they don't make it as footballers and they've invested so much effort and time and so much of their life into football, they can become depressed, unfortunately, and have so many problems. So as an Italian football fan, I think it'd be great if the Italian FIGC ensured that they would have that funding, so that if they do get injuries, they would have that support, including financial support or any other support they need, mental assistance or anything like that. Anyway, I hope that all made sense, and sorry if I did waffle, and as ever, I'd love to hear your opinion, and I am out. Peace and love.